Hello, it's Dee, and in this segment that I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about sex. And I'm probably going to talk about it, it's getting warm in here. We're talking about my life. We're talking about my life journey. And the last couple of videos, which are talks that are going to be in my book, I talked about how I was abused as a child and various things happened. The first time that I remember having sex was when I got married when I was 29 years old. I know that sounds crazy, but it's the truth. And I was so damaged that even on the wedding night, we didn't have sex. It was the day after the wedding night. And growing up as a teenager, in my 20s, there was zero sexual energy. I was not attracted to men or women on a sexual level. I was attracted to beauty, and I was attracted to a very fine man would walk by in a tuxedo, shoes to match, just dressed and pressed. I was attracted to that. I was attracted to not a woman, but a lady come by in a tailored suit, in a evening gown, hair done, nails done, shoes, everything. Manners, I was attracted to that. But there was no sexual attraction of, oh, I'd like to lay him or her or whatever. That's all foreign to me. As a child, I don't remember ever playing with other children, playing doctor like I hear people. And some of my friends, they talk about coming out, being gay, and how their mothers or somebody walked in on them when they were masturbating. I don't ever remember masturbating. I don't ever remember having a erection. I don't ever remember having a wet dream. Now, so many parts of my life I have memory lapse and what the doctor called selective amnesia. That there are so many things that have happened that as a defense mechanism, I have chosen to compartmentalize in those and not even remember those. Let me give you an example, and I'm going to try to keep it on the sex level. That's what this chapter's going to be about. There came a time in my mid-30s when I would say 33, 34, somewhere in that time frame, I did begin to go out with men. But there was a time about maybe 38, 39 that I had a complete breakdown and tried to commit suicide. But this chapter's not about that breakdown and suicide. You'll read that later. And it was after that attempt that I found myself in the hospital and then in therapy. And it was in the long therapy sessions that I began to unlock some of the things that happened in my childhood. Now, I knew I had been burnt because I could see the scar on my back. So I knew that that had happened. In certain areas, things that happened, I knew something had happened because I could see the evidence of it physically. But some of the emotional things that happened had to kind of put together because it was all foggy. And the sex part was something that wasn't clear to me. I'm not going to do a teaching on chakras now, but we have 7 basic chakra points in our body. And those chakra points are our energy points, or our towers. We transmit things to the cell towers from our cell phones, and that electromagnetic wave frequency transmits it through, so that you get to see and hear what somebody else is saying. That's the best way I can put it. So in our body, there's the heart chakra, there's the head chakra, which is the divine chakra, but where our genitals are, that's the sacral, the creative chakra. And wherever we are damaged in our chakras and our cell towers and that energy, that's where disease and disconnect begin to happen. So there was a disconnect. You said, well, when you went to college, wasn't there anything? No. I was in a very strict Christian college. Girls shied away from me. Boys shied away from me. Nobody. I've been by myself for so long. And the only thing I've really wanted in my life is just for somebody to love me. And there's many things I've done trying to get that love, and sex later on was one of those. But in my teens and in my 20s, that wasn't part of it. Any sexual activity was rape and molestation. And so when let me jump ahead just a little bit. So having been a minister, and we'll talk about that in a different chapter too, but having been a minister and being in a very large church and being on staff, the pastors' wives called me in to speak with them on an afternoon. Now remember, my name was Stephen at the time, and there was 4 pastors plus me, and the pastor's wife called and said, Steve, can you come over to the church office, and we want to talk to you. Now, I've always been colorful. Maybe that's been my shell to a protection. I don't know. So I went over, they talked to me, and they said, we need you to start dating because people think you're gay. As crazy it may sound to you, I had no concept of what gay on a sexual level connotation was. On Sundays we sang, I got good reason to be happy and gay. The Lord took all my sins away. So I said, well, I am. We're happy, we're gay. The Lord took our sins away. They said, no, that's not what we mean. We're talking about homosexual. Well, I didn't even know what homosexual was. So I said, okay, the next girl that comes here that's pretty, because I don't do anything ugly, I'll at least ask her out. So that was my introduction, and some of the young guys in the church that was in the music group that I was with, they bought me a book, Everything You Want to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask. Now, I had seen movies, but it didn't connect with me. That was acting. I don't know how to describe all of this. So in my marriage, I learned about sex, and I learned about intimacy, and I learned about I already had known the physical components from reading the book and unlocking some of the cobwebs of my mind kind of came in again, but some of it didn't make any sense to me because the creative part of my life was all about ministry, and we'll get into that at a different point. So after my divorce, I went out with a man, and we had sex. And I said, oh, that's not that much different than if I was with a woman. We can do this. But there was a connection with a man that there hadn't been with my wife. There was a physical energy, something that made me feel complete. But I've thought that sex and love went hand in hand, and I never saw that guy again. And I was crushed because I'm seeking for somebody to love me, thinking that the two are one. And I remember to this day the first time I hooked up with a guy and went home with him and had sex, and I didn't even know his name. I cried for weeks after that because not because of the sex, but because I didn't know his name, and I couldn't believe that I had sex with somebody not even knowing their name. So there was a lot for me to learn on the sexual level, and even at 74 years old, there are still things and terms and things that I'm learning. Let's just keep it real. And yes, in an idealistic way, I wish that I never learned that you could have sex without love, because I would like to still think that love and sex go together. I think we play too much with sex, and we, gay guys especially, we can swing from the chandeliers, but we don't know how to have intimacy, because intimacy is into me, see. We don't let people see into us because we don't even see into ourselves. We're so damaged by not wanting to feel and not feel. And I know what that damage feels like. So I spent the next several years, this next decades. I remember that somebody said, oh, well, we should, you're a prude. We should just make you a lunch and send you to the bathhouse for the weekend. And I remember my attitude at that time was, oh, well, I'm not like them. And yes, I found myself not right at that time. I've found myself in many bathhouses in my lifetime. I found myself having sex with multiple partners since then. What I find is still looking for love in all the wrong places. Still wanting somebody to love me and hoping that through this sex. But what do you do when the sex ends? You know, it's like the old couple sitting on the bench holding hands. There's something there that's deeper than the sex. when you see the old couple and they're really old and their eyes twinkle when they look at each other. That's something deeper than the sex. So in these chapters, while I'm giving you an overview, I will be telling you some stories that are funny, some heartbreaking stories where I've got my heart broken, some stories where I had expectations, some stories of how I sat in an overstuffed chair a whole weekend, and at the time we had the phone that had cord on it, and when I went to the bathroom, I was able to pull the cord to the bathroom because the guy's going to call me. We're going to see each other this weekend. I'm still waiting for him to call. Well, I'm not waiting for him to call anymore, but he still hasn't called, and that's how many years ago. So this sexual energy was something that came about later in my life. And when we talk about gender identification and we talk about sexual orientation, it's two different things. So through our life, the goal is to get to know you. Get to know you and value you. Not value you by what somebody else thinks of you. You know, I've been hung up for the last year on a guy. And I realized the other night, and I said this to him, I said, do you realize I've been valuing how I felt about myself on the premise and the base of how you've reacted towards me? I've thought if I fit in here, here, and here, then I'm being validated. And I said, the truth is, I need to validate myself with myself. We're making unfair comparisons with other people and things. We're really bad at that. So I'm going to touch on those things that are things that we don't talk about, things that are personal, things that we become addicted to so that we won't have to get to know ourselves. And this is just the video part of this chapter that's going to be just simply called Sex. 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 Oh yes.